empathy in the workplace. In the workplace, are you able to say no? How many times do you find yourself with a pile of work that you're not supposed to have on your desk? Staying at work much later. Sometimes saying no is actually saying yes to your health, yes to rest, yes to high quality work, yes to future opportunities in the workplace. And many times when you say yes to what you should have said no to, then you are saying no to everything else that I've mentioned. Maybe I'm wrong, but I found that where I came from, when you try to negotiate the best deal for yourself, you're seen as being problematic. I've seen Africans having great difficulty asking for better treatment. And this vulnerability leads to exploitation. The perception that Africans deserve less is easily reinforced because we have been conditioned to accept less. How do we embed, or how do we create a safe workplace culture or an empathic workplace culture? Welcome to Mindset Talk with me, host Jabu Zwane. Thank you so much for tuning in to Mindset Talk. Once again, Mindset Talk is a podcast that talks to you and helps you to understand what are mindsets, how do mindsets form, what is the function of mindsets in our lives, and how can you best create the types of mindsets that you need to build the life that you want to live. Don't we all want to build the lives that we want to live? Wouldn't that be amazing? And so in this show, we are going to be changing your mind one thought at a time. Yes, there'll be healing, restoration, transformation, growth, and most importantly, thriving. Yes, because 2025 is the year of thriving. No more excuses. We are wrapping up actually the series on empathy, being the thriving, healthy empath. And today I want to take it more into the boardroom. I'll be talking a little bit more about empathy in the workplace. What does it look like? How does it affect you, especially as somebody that's an empath, that is multi-talented, that is highly skilled? How do you manage it in a way that it doesn't punish you, where it doesn't cost you promotions, where it doesn't cost you potential, as we spoke about it last week? And if you're not careful, empathy can actually cost us our potential. So I'll be talking a little bit more from also the point of Ubuntu and talk about how Ubuntu clashes with the Western culture and how do we balance that. And I'm going to go then straight into what does it look like in terms of the work landscape? What does research say? What is the current status as far as how many people are experiencing the empathy in the workplace? And then I'm going to wrap it up by talking a bit more about what can you actually do, practical skills, practical mindset skills that you can apply to manage your empathy. One more time, I want to say thank you to Arise Studio. Thank you to my man, Eo. Thank you to the team for taking the time to be here and to host this podcast and to support me in this way. Much appreciated. I'm going to buy you guys some sweets afterwards. Don't hold me to it. But anyway, it's going to happen. Coffee, actually. We're going to do that. Yes. All right, cool. Now, let me ask you this question. In the workplace, are you able to say no? How many times do you find yourself with a pile of work that you're not supposed to have on your desk? How many times do you find yourself staying at work much later, not because you've not done your work, but because you've accepted work from the colleagues that they've asked you to do to help them out, because apparently you are amazing at this. You are so good at whatever it is that you're doing. And because you're good, it's almost like you're getting punished for being good at what you do. And then that happens through you receiving more work. And the reason why sometimes we find ourselves in those situations are two. Sometimes it's because we are people pleasers, and sometimes it is because we are empaths. We spoke about the difference between people pleasing and empathy last week. And we said that if you are a people pleaser, you find it hard to say no because you want to be approved. You want to be liked. You want people to think that you're amazing. And you're doing that for some kind of validation, either because of some insecurity that you may have, or because maybe you're trying to get promoted. Whatever the case might be, there is a clear difference between an empath and a people pleaser. On the other hand, the motivation for an empath for doing and for saying yes to work to workload that you don't need and that you should have said no to has got more to do with wanting to be helpful, wanting to give value to your workplace, and wanting, of course, to be collaborative with your colleagues. However, as I've said many, many times throughout this series, you've got to be very careful how you treat yourself. And part of the way that you treat yourself is the yeses that you say to, or the requests that you say yes to. If you're saying yes to so many requests that you are unable to have your own personal time, that you're not able to do your work, that you start being compromised, looking like you are not a hard-working person, or that you are not a competent person, then your inability to say no is costing you, and it is a high time that you learned how to say no. Understanding this, that sometimes saying no is actually saying yes to your health, yes to rest, yes to high quality work, yes to future opportunities in the workplace. And many times when you say yes to what you should have said no to, then you are saying no to everything else that I've mentioned. You are saying no to a good reputation. You are saying no to time at home with your loved ones. You are saying no to some of the personal development endeavors that you're supposed to be taking to improve your experience, your skills, and giving yourself a better chance of getting promoted at work. I know what I'm saying can be a little bit daunting, but anyway, let's go into the book and let's read a little bit more about this whole factor of empathy. I'm talking about Ubuntu in the workplace because for me, as an African and as somebody that believes in Ubuntu, I find that Ubuntu is the same as what empathy is. This whole idea that I am because you are, or that I can never be until you are. I can never fully enjoy my humanity until your humanity is free, until you are able to make your choices, until you're safe, until you can thrive, until you can grow, until you can exercise your humanity in the same way that I am. I should never be comfortable being free. And that is the whole idea of Ubuntu. But what happens when Ubuntu, this principle of being collaborative, being a collectivist society, minding how you make other people feel, and almost in a way ensuring that you comply with the societal rules that are sensitive to you standing out. Like when you stand out, you'll find that sometimes in our culture, people start saying to you, "Ya papa," or you know, now, which means that you can see yourself, or that you think that you're better than other people, because Ubuntu is quite sensitive to that whole idea of standing out and outshining others and looking at or appearing as though you are better off than other people. What happens when you come into the workplace, that requires for you to be an individual. That requires for you to talk to your work, promote your work, celebrate your work, and say, yes, I'm amazing, I've done this, where confidence actually is celebrated and it is something that is actually wanted, that is solicited out of you, where being able to stand as a brand. I mean, in the workplace, in the Western workplace, we speak about personal brands. We speak about the importance of confidence. We speak about the importance of being able to stand up and speak up for the things that you believe in. We speak about you as an individual having an identity independent of the structures that you come from, which sometimes can seem to be a contradiction when it comes to, Ubuntu. So let's quickly look at it. In this chapter here, I write about it as a struggle for me, a struggle with Ubuntu as an African. What happens when Ubuntu meets the Western workplace? Okay, so let's look at it here. Thinking about it now from myself as somebody who comes from a small town and some of the challenges that I had when I first came into the workplace. In the Western workplace, self-promotion is not only encouraged, it is necessary. You are expected to talk up your work, highlight your achievements, and ensure that your contributions are visible. This visibility is the ticket to promotions, leadership opportunities, and success in the workplace. But for us who are raised in Ubuntu, this is deeply uncomfortable. We were taught that drawing attention to ourselves diminishes others. Growing up, I often heard the words, "Don't boast, let your work speak for itself." Success in our culture is meant to be shared quietly with the community, not paraded as personal victory. The Western world interprets humility differently. When an African professional doesn't speak up, doesn't insist on being seen, they risk being overlooked and losing out on opportunities. Their hard work may go unnoticed, their value diminished. Worse yet, this reluctance can be misinterpreted as a lack of ambition, a lack of confidence, or a lack of ability. I found that there was a risk of someone else taking credit of your work when you don't put your name up on that work. In other words, when you don't label the work, which is something that is quite hard for many of us. So the reflection that I had was this, or the question I want you to think about is this: how does a professional reconcile Ubuntu's quiet dignity with the Western demand for self-promotion? How does this work? Because there is a little bit of conflict here. There's a conflict between that whole existing in harmony, but also the need for people to come out and to step up. Like, in order for us to be able to move forward, even as a people, some people have to step up, and they've got to come out and stand out in their talents, in their skills. Otherwise, we don't get too far when all of us are the same. The fact that Ubuntu places a high premium on harmony, mutual respect, and collective blame, when conflict arises, it is handled delicately, with care taken to preserve relationships and dignity. African professionals raised in this culture may avoid direct confrontation, preferring subtlety, mediation, or silence to resolve tension. In the Western workplace, on the other hand, conflict is approached differently. Confrontation is expected sometimes. It is sometimes celebrated as a path to resolution, or preferred as a path to resolution. Those who avoid conflict may be seen as weak or as ineffective, yet an African professional does not see avoidance as weakness. They see it as a way of preserving dignity and relationships. But we see this a lot, especially if we think about the way that we handle conflicts. You'd be like, just, you know how this person is, just leave them. Just let it go. It's not a big deal. And really, the preservation of peace having such a high premium. And sometimes it can really create a situation where we don't confront what needs to be confronted, where there is almost a lack of personal accountability. This whole collective, it's a collective responsibility. It's a collective when certain things have been achieved. And unfortunately, when certain things also have gone wrong, if we're talking about a collective, then we find it difficult to find out where exactly have things gone wrong. And I want to be very personal and think about myself as a South African right now and what's been happening in our country, that there's so many times where we'll find these politicians or these leaders in government, when they're being interviewed and they're being asked, like, what happened? And then they'll talk about, no, it's the collective, and we are looking at it internally, and everything is kept internally and it's hush-hush. And there is nobody being held accountable for some of the gravest of offenses. We've been dealing a little bit with load shedding again. Back last week, we promised that load shedding is not going to happen, and it starts to come back. And then when questions are being asked again, nobody is being held accountable for what needs to change. And that is the challenge with this whole collectivist mindset. That how can we preserve our collective dignity, but while at the same time call to the accountability at an individual level? It's a question that I may not necessarily have an answer to. Hopefully by the time that we are done, we're going to have some answers to some of these questions that I'm posing today. All right. Okay. Here are some of the ways, some of the challenges. When it comes to conflict resolution, Ubuntu places high premium on harmony. As I've mentioned, I've already read that. This difference in how the Western and how the Ubuntu handles situations can create misunderstandings. For instance, African professionals may hesitate to challenge authority, even when decisions are unfair. They may sidestep issues rather than engage in direct confrontation, believing that respect for hierarchy is paramount. In contrast, Western colleagues accustomed to voicing their disagreements openly may interpret this as passivity or a lack of assertiveness or a lack of confidence, and as I've mentioned, in some situations, even a lack of competence. And so when it comes, therefore, to opportunities in the future that require those skills, that require assertiveness, that require that you be able to negotiate the best deals for yourself and for the company. In other words, when it comes to some of these leadership traits that are required at an individual level, because what we sometimes don't understand is the following. Leadership has got those two aspects. It's got the aspect of who you are as a leader and the aspect of how you are with others. So if your leadership is only married to how you impact other people, you can find yourself in situations where then you are not able to confront, that you take too long to make decisions, that you're too worried about how other people are feeling, sometimes to the detriment of the urgent decisions that need to be taken. Yes, it is great that we can go out and can collaborate, that we can seek people's feedback and seek for their opinion about how they are experiencing you as a leader, how are they experiencing the changes that are happening in the workplace. But at the very same time, some decisions don't have the time for that extensive consultation. Some decisions are urgent and they need to be made now. And then you only manage the change or the impact of the decision as it unfolds. So the reflection I want you to have with me is this: is confrontation the only path to resolution? Or can harmony and respect coexist with accountability? I've learned that holding people accountable does not have to be disrespectful. I can confront with empathy, saying, I value the relationship, but I need to address something that is very, very important. Like, I want you to think about this for a second. When somebody has done something that makes you feel uncomfortable at work, maybe they keep on calling you, let's say, they say they're insulting to you. Maybe they're undermining your decisions as a newly appointed manager. It could be because maybe you're a woman. It could be because of you're a different race. It could be for whatever reason you find that people aren't taking you seriously. Do you get that sick thing in your stomach when you think about the fact that you've got to confront, and then you'd rather let it go than to create problems? Like, you find a way to reason with yourself to let go of behavior that is harming you. The sad part about that is that, especially if you're a leader and you are unable to confront, then it presents you as a leader that is not strong, that's weak. And also, other people, the ones that you're leading your team, feel vulnerable. They feel like you can't protect them. They feel like they cannot rely on you, especially if it so happens, let's say maybe there's a bully in the team, someone that's got a very strong personality, always talking over other people, always even taking over people's work, taking over people's credit for the work that they've done. If you don't confront that and you don't deal with that particular person, other members of the team feel vulnerable. They feel exposed. You may be thinking, I don't want to offend them. You may be thinking, I don't want to make them feel like I don't value them. You might even find that this person is a high performer, because it happens quite a lot, where a person is a high performer, and because they're a high performer, they've got a strong personality, they've got a big personality that is domineering, and sometimes in a way that is uncomfortable for the rest of the team. If you don't handle that, although this person may be a high performer, the rest of the team feels vulnerable. They feel psychologically unsafe because you are not able to confront. And I'm just wanting to, I want you to think about, like in my case, I know one of the reasons why I was like that, where I was a leader that would not confront people, was because, this whole idea of Ubuntu and of humility and not being confrontational and of speaking softly and gently. And in some situations, you've got to be very strong and very assertive and have to confront some of these bullish behavior. The second thing is about negotiating with yourself, for yourself. This is now the reluctance to demand more. Western professionals are trained to negotiate for their worth. They ask for raises, demand better positions, and advocate for themselves confidently. In their culture, negotiation is a skill, not a threat to relationship. In the Western culture, negotiating the best for yourself is a skill that is coveted and that you'll get rewarded for. It is not seen as a threat to a relationship. Maybe I'm wrong, but I found that where I came from, when you try to negotiate the best deal for yourself, you're seen as being problematic. You're seen as trying to be difficult. You're seen as trying to be different from the rest of other people. Like, have you seen it sometimes when you're standing in the queue, and we will all stand in the queue, especially if you go into the township. Nobody's going to complain about the queue, the long line. Maybe there'll be some memory here and there, but nobody's going to step up to the front and say, what's going on here? But try that. Let that happen in the suburbs. Let that happen in these areas where it's predominantly Western. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, somebody's going to step up and say, hey, what's going on here? They'll walk up to the front and say, what is going on? How come we're not getting the service that we're supposed to be getting? And so that is such a distinct difference that I find, as much as Ubuntu is great, we need to use that to balance cultural and communal sensitivity with also the need to still preserve the dignity of an individual. Okay, and so for me as an African who's shaped by Ubuntu, we are raised to value collective well-being over individual gain. Asking for more can feel like what? Greed. As if you're taking from the collective rather than contributing to the collective. I've seen, and I've been in a situation myself, where African professionals accept less than they deserve simply because they fear being seen as ungrateful or entitled. In fact, many a times I have what did I write here? Many a times I've seen Africans having great difficulty asking for better treatment. And this vulnerability leads to exploitation. Western systems built on profits and processes can easily take advantage of those who do not fight for themselves. The perception that Africans deserve less is easily reinforced because we have been conditioned to accept less. And maybe I'm going to be a bit controversial here, but I've experienced this a lot, and I've heard this a lot, where people are wanting and fighting for the best. It'll be like, but you should be grateful. You should be grateful that you've got a job. Somebody says, I'd like to get a minimum wage. Well, you should be grateful you have a job. If everybody got the minimum wage, then it will cripple the economy. Then it will do this and it will do that. But at the very same time, nobody thinks about how much the person is being crippled when they are being paid less, when their best is being taken for nothing. All right, and then here's another one. The perception of protest, gratitude versus disruption. When African professionals challenge unfair treatment, they often walk on a fine line. In Western systems, raising grievances, whether about pay disparities, discrimination, or workplace politics, can be seen as disruption or ingratitude. African professionals often think, I should be grateful I have a job. This expectation of gratitude, self imposed or inferred, mirrors historical patterns of oppression where exploitation was masked as generosity. All right. Here's one of the conversations that we're having right now in South Africa. There was a protest by a group of people that are Afrikaners the other day about, this whole land expropriation without dispensation, or not dispensation, without compensation. It's a dispensation of protest. So land expropriation without compensation. And I found it fascinating that there were placards there that said, make South Africa great again. Make South Africa great again. And I was sitting there thinking, when was South Africa ever great? It was never great during apartheid. And yes, there were moments of change that were better during democracy. But to say great, I personally, in my almost 46 years of living, I have not seen a great South Africa. Yes, our desire for South Africa to be greater than it has been, but to say that South Africa must be great again, and I've seen this a lot where then the greatness has got to do with infrastructure that was running at a much better now, but it was running much better for a smaller group of people, not for the rest of the population. And so when people then are making comparisons about great, they're making comparisons in terms of their own experience, especially of infrastructure, of safety, of lifestyles that were protected because of the government of the day and the conditions of the day. But it is also true that for the majority of this country who happen to be black, colored people, and to a degree Indian people, they did not experience South Africa that way. They did not experience the safety, the endless opportunities, the fair pay that some people are referring to as a great South Africa. And then when they are protesting and when they want better, it's almost as if they are being ungrateful, especially when it comes to the workplace. It's fascinating for me that you find people fighting for better infrastructure, better experiences within their suburbs, because at work, but not so much at work, because maybe at work they're getting paid well. And because they're getting paid well and they don't have as many economic challenges, then it's not a big deal that other people are not getting paid well at work. And when other people are not getting paid well at work, are advocating for themselves to get paid well at work, it's like, oh, but you are being ungrateful. You should be grateful that you got a job. Do you know how many people don't have a job? And then, of course, in other countries, it'll be like, if you're not happy with the conditions, and you are a migrant, then go back to your country. You should not ask for a better deal for yourself. And it's quite fascinating that it is often the people group and the cultures that have this collectivist mentality that tend to accept a lesser deal for themselves. And when they start to advocate for themselves because it is out of the norm, then there is resistance. And I think that becomes a challenge sometimes. And that's one of the reasons why then empaths even tend not to then step up to the microphone to protest, to advocate for themselves because of this resistance that they're experiencing. So the question that I want us to think about is this: how can we bring the spirit of Ubuntu in the workplace, in workplaces that celebrate individualism? I believe that we do not need to erase Ubuntu to succeed in the Western spaces. Ubuntu and empathy are one and the same. In recent times, empathy has been sought as a crucial leadership skill and corporate trait that can to cultivate a healthy organization, or to create a healthy culture in an organization. We can celebrate our teams, share recognition, uplift others while stepping forward and owning our contributions. It is the perfect marriage waiting to happen. So there is definitely a need for us there to marry those two together. There is an invitation for us then to balance that. I want to close off with the following statement. Ubuntu taught me to honor the collective, but the West has taught me that I must honor myself too. I can thrive in a Western system without losing the essence of who I am as an African. I can speak, stand, and shine because of my light does not diminish yours. In fact, it reminds you to shine too. I am because you are, but I must also be holy and unapologetically myself, even as I advocate for you to be. I must be wholly myself, unapologetically so, even as I advocate for you to be yourself. I hope this makes a lot of sense. I hope this is helpful. And I think with that in mind, I'm going to then move on to looking at empathy in the workplace. It is part of the bonus section that I have in here in the book, in the book, where last week we did the other bonus segment about masculine and feminine empathy. What is the difference between the two? How do you find the balance between the two? And today I'm trying to then to talk about how can we find balance with empathy in the workplace so that it doesn't actually result in us losing out or in you losing out. Now in South Africa, as I've already mentioned, I mean, we've got a history. We've got a history of exploitation. We've got a history of hostility between labor and business. I remember that there's a research that was done quite several years ago that found out that South Africa is one of the most hostile work relationships in the world. It has one of the most hostile work environment in the world. In other words, hostility between labor and between business. There is a lack of trust. There is a lack of psychological safety. There is a lack of physical safety, in fact, in some of the places where safety is supposed to happen. And people are really experiencing the most when it comes to the workplace. There is a definite rise as far as even sick leave is concerned. People not wanting to go to work, taking sick leave because of the adverse work conditions. A study published in South African Journal of Human Resources Management by Imelda Paltu, Marissa Brovers, highlights the prevalence of toxic leadership styles such as abusive supervision and authoritarianism, which are positively correlated with job dissatisfaction and increased turnover amongst employees. This was a research that was done. So we find that these leadership styles contribute to lack of psychological safety, making it difficult for empathy to flourish within organization. So the question that I want to ask you is that, do you feel like your workplace is empathic or empathetic? Do you feel that your workplace allows you to be yourself without any negative repercussions or any adverse reaction to you trying to be genuinely yourself? Do you feel that your workplace is considerate to cultural differences, the diverse cultures that are part and parcel of the workplace? Or do you feel that certain people, certain cultures, or ethnicities tend to carry more favor, tend to be more favored at work than others? I mean, all of those, if you don't feel that and you find that you're in a workplace that doesn't allow you to be yourself, that is a hostile workplace that is apathetic and that is lacking with empathy. And if you so happen to be a leader in that environment, I want to put it to you that you have the responsibility to build a psychologically safe work environment, and people are taking a cue from you in terms of how that looks like. Every workplace tends to take the personality of the leader, whether it's in a team setting, whether it's in a department setting or not. I want to quickly just make this example. I want you to imagine for a second in terms of the power parity. What is your level of power as a leader? If let's say that power was to be measured for 1-to-1, one person to one equals power. If you are then the leader that has 10 people reporting to you, that basically means that your power is 1-to-10. So for every, you have power to impact and to influence 10 people. But not only that, I want you to also imagine for a second that because of you are there in the authority of the company, you also have your manager's power parity. So if your manager happens to have 5 of you, let's say 5 of you supervisors, and then each one of you supervisors is leading 10 people, that basically means that indirectly your power parity is 1-to-50. You've got the power to impact 50 people because you can go to your manager or you can go to the CEO or you can go to whoever. You can influence them to implement certain changes in the workplace, and those changes would impact everybody in the company. So it's very, very important then for us to be mindful of that power. And as a result, when it comes to culture, imagine for a second that when you cough, everybody catches a cold. When you cough, everybody catches a cold for you as a leader. So as far as your personality is concerned, pretty much the culture within your company is going to mirror your personality. If you tend to be the type of person as a leader that is not empathic, that is not considerate, that does not show compassion, that does not give people a chance to speak, and then you just take unilateral decisions without any consultation, especially for the decisions that require consultation, that is the culture that your company, your people are going to take. They're going to emulate that from you. Why is that the case? Science has proven to us that we are influenced passively way more than we are actively getting influenced. You're receiving so much data in a passive state that is changing who you are and affecting who you are as a person more than you are doing that actively. Learning is, for example, learning in a setting of the university is a very minimal amount of learning. Yes, it does bring things into context most of the time because we go to university, go to school to learn a bit of critical thinking. Hopefully that's what we're doing. And we learn a way of looking and thinking about things. But most of what we learn, we don't even know that we have learned it. Nobody teaches a child how to speak, but a child learns how to speak. Nobody teaches a child necessarily how to walk, but a child learns how to walk, unless, of course, intervention is required, especially in a situation where the child may have some kind of incapacity. I know this because my daughter is paraplegic and she has cerebral palsy. So in that case, you've got to intervene and teach the child who has some incapacities how to manage with those. But for the rest of the children and for the rest of us who don't have those physical incapacities, we're learning how to walk, how to speak, how to think certain things, how things work by observation, through observation. Nobody's actively teaching us. We are using our intuition, we are using our cognizance to learn so much in a passive state. And by the time that we are grown up, we've learned patterns of behavior that we're not even aware of. Similarly, when you are in the workplace, people are watching you as a leader. You teach them how to treat others based on how you treat them and how you treat their colleagues. I hope that helps. And so empathy as a trait, if you want empathy to be a trait in your work culture, it is something that you're going to have to work on. Because here's some very, very interesting reads here in the book. Corporate bullying, ranging from micromanagement to overt harassment, has become a silent epidemic in organizations. These behaviors erode trust, damage self-esteem, and create hostile work environments where creativity and collaboration are stifled. In the United States, the statistics show that 4 out of 10 employees suffer from some form of workplace bullying. defined as repeated mistreatment of an employee by one or more employees. Abusive conduct that is threatening, humiliating, or intimidating, workplace sabotage or verbal abuse, which is still latent, and cases are on the rise. So there's definitely a rise as far as hostile work environments. And this was basically from mydisabilityjobs.com. And here's a key insight. Without empathy, these toxic dynamics flourish unchecked, leading to long-term damage to both individuals and organizational culture. 65% of bullying victims displayed symptoms of depression up to 5 years after being bullied. Let's park there for a second. 65% of people who have experienced workplace bullying display depression signs up to 5 years after bullying. This is really, really concerning. Is it then no wonder that so many people are feeling isolated, that loneliness is on the rise, that anti-relationship attitude is on the rise, that there is a certain kind of mistrust of leadership, mistrust of people, even rises in terms of relationship, that anti-marriage ideas are on the rise, anti-collaborative, collective relationships are on the rise. So a gray area in South African law is where depression does not lead to disability, but the depressed employee has to be reasonably accommodated by the employer, and this presents a problem that needs to be addressed in the future. So there are some articles that I share here in the book based on research that was done. But I want to talk solutions. There's been a lot that I've said that that it almost sounds very depressive. But I want to talk a little bit about solutions here. How do we embed, or how do we create a safe workplace culture or an empathic workplace culture? I believe that empathy is the antidote to this imbalance, because it can enable organizations to reconcile their performance with their responsibility to care for people. Empathy in the workplace is not about lowering standards, but it is about creating environments where employees feel seen, feel valued, and supported, enabling them to perform at their best. Empathy matters in the workplace because it drives engagement. Employees who feel understood and valued are more likely to be engaged and committed to their work. We know that disengagement is a serious issue, hence this whole issue, the rise of quiet quitting, which basically means that people are not as fully engaged in the workplace. They only do whatever is necessary, the bare minimum, and they walk away not doing more. Empathic workplaces can improve loyalty. Yes, it is true, you want to have a highly productive environment. And yes, you can drive productivity through policy, through regulations, through KPIs, through making sure that everybody comes to work on time, and all of those factors that are crucial for productivity. However, if there is no empathy, then people are not going to feel valued. It's very likely that people are just going to have a very transactional relationship in the workplace, where they only work according to what they're getting paid per hour. Or if they feel that whatever they're getting paid per hour is not enough, that also means that they're not going to bring them the best of themselves forward. But if the workplace is empathic, where there's consideration for people's well-being, people can become loyal. People can transcend harsh working conditions, especially if maybe it has to do with maybe infrastructure, or even maybe overload and all those factors. But if there is good treatment, if there's an attempt to treat people well, they can be able to transcend some of the work challenges, especially in those demanding situations. It also enhances retention. Empathy reduces turnover by fostering loyalty and satisfaction, as I've already mentioned. It promotes innovation, it builds trust, and it also humanizes leadership. Dehumanized leadership is just management. It's where you're treating people as things. You're managing people as resources, It's interesting that we even have this terminology, human resources, like looking as human beings as resources. And unfortunately, they can kind of create, as I've said, a transactional relationship. But if you want to create a culture where people are able to adapt through change, where people are able to be with you as a leader when things are really, really tough, it's important to be mindful of their humanity. So empathic leadership, it means this. We train leaders to develop emotional intelligence, active listening, and compassion. Listen to what others are saying. Understand that people are not always necessarily making excuses. Sometimes people are going through stuff. And when we give them an ear, and when they feel emotionally and psychologically safe, they can still perform at a high level because they don't feel like there is a threat on their lives at work, a threat to lose their job, a threat to not be promoted, a threat and an insistence, unrealistic insistence that they toughen it up even when things are challenging and they can't be vulnerable. So it's important to prioritize psychological safety by, for example, creating an environment where employees feel safe to express themselves without fear. Be very careful how you respond to people's mistakes. Do you become super harsh? Do you attack them? Do you insult them? Do you shame them? Do you threaten them? Do you intimidate them to the point where they find it difficult to make any mistakes? If that is the case, ladies and gentlemen, it'll make it very, very difficult for us then to create a safe work environment. I'm going to close off this segment because this is going to be a two-part segment. I'm going to close it off by saying a few things and then I'll be done here. Balancing performance with well-being. All right. In the workplace, it is important to align organizational goals with employee well-being by integrating wellness initiatives into your strategic planning. Like when you are having your strategic session as a company, is it only about profits? When have you ever in your company sat down in a strategic session that included well-being of employees as part of your strategy? How are you going to ensure that you handle factors such as workplace bullying, psychological harassment, digital harassment, cyberbullying in the workplace, cultural, racial, gender bullying in the workplace, ensuring that not only are your workplaces inclusive, but also they're not only inclusive, but they're also meaningfully participatory. Like you allow people, you include people, but they also are participating in leadership, participating in decision making, participating in the financial prosperity of a company. So it isn't just about the numbers that you're ticking. We've got this many women, we've got this many men, we've got this many people from particular race, we've got this many people from particular culture. But how many of them are in strategic positions of influence that in the end influence the culture? Because it is only when everybody is included in those strategic positions of influence that it can be an empathic work environment. Because it is considerate of other people who you may not be aware of how some of the decisions impact them. And inclusive work cultures are empathic work cultures. Or empathic work cultures will struggle to be empathic without including others. And inclusivity is not about ticking some legislative box, but it is really about giving everybody a fair chance to participate, to self-determine, to do what they're supposed to do or what they want to do to progress and to go further in the workplace. In South Africa's history of apartheid, that has left deep scars that continue to influence societal workplaces and the dynamics. For many employees, workplaces are not just places of employment. They are spaces where historical inequalities and trauma are still being experienced. Empathy in South African workplaces is more than a leadership skill. It is a tool of national healing and transformation. What are we supposed to do? It's important that we acknowledge historical context. Organizations must realize how or recognize how apartheid's legacy affects the employees and stakeholders, shaping both challenges and opportunities. Driving social change by fostering empathic leadership, companies can contribute to broader societal transformation, promoting equality and justice. It's important for leaders to lead by examples. Empathy is the missing link in today's workplaces, and it is a skill that bridges the gap between the relentless demands of productivity and the essential need for humanity. By embedding empathy into organizational culture, companies can create environments where people thrive, innovation flourishes, and success is sustainable. Empathy is not a luxury in leadership, it is a responsibility. It transforms workplaces from environments of survival to thriving work environments. So for us to be able to create and to build thriving work environments, empathy has got to be a crucial component of workplace culture. We need more understanding and empathic leaders. We need less pressure in workplaces where it's just about productivity, and profits. We need some Ubuntu and some humanity in our workplaces. My name is Jabu Zwane. Thank you so much for tuning in to Mindset Talk today. I hope today's talk is going to help you to become a better leader, to become a better employee, and to become a better empath that thrives in the workplace and that does not get punished because of your good heart. Mindset Talk is a podcast where you learn what are mindsets, how do mindsets form, what is the function of mindsets in our lives, and how can you best create the types of mindsets that you need to build the life that you want. Great thanks once again to the Rise Studios, to Eob and the team. Thank you for the platform. Remember, if you are liking what you've heard, if you're enjoying these podcasts, remember to click that subscribe button, that notification bell. Give us your comments and let me know what you think about what you've heard today. And of course, let your friends know about the Mindset Podcast. My name is Jabu Zwane. Thank you so much. Peace. I'll see you on the second part of this podcast.